Brown waiting. Back to the line for Berg. Left point shoots. Deflected. Bedard. Backhander scores. Connor Bedard with his 10th of the season. In the slot, here's Furcus. Feeds it across to the right circle. Wrist shot. Nice kick save. Rebound. Great save by Sim on Riley Chanel. Drew Sim just stuck out the blocker.
That is a tremendous save.
Welcome into Patscast, the unofficial Regina Pats podcast, with your hosts Chris Clark and Kevin Shaw. All right, folks, tonight, no Kevin, but we've got a special guest for you. Everett and Tri-City coming in. We've got a guest to kind of give us a rundown of the American teams coming in and the American division as a whole, Chad Balcom. But before we get to Chad, I'm going to go over the Moose Jaw game. I mean, it was an ugly one, another one, unfortunately. It was kind of like the Lethbridge game all over, except Moose Jaw's a lot better. There was no coming back on Thursday night. First off, seeing Howe and Vallis out of the lineup, 2/3 of the top line, that's always never a good thing. They're behind the eight ball before they even begin, unfortunately. Then they give up the first two goals. Svozil gets a lucky one back. Then they hit the post. I think that could have been maybe the turning point. Maybe not the way they played the rest of the game, but if they made it 2-2, maybe they have some more life. Maybe not. And then it just got worse from there. I mean, it was ugly. It was ugly like the Lethbridge game, and there was no coming back on a solid Moose Jaw team. After the game, John Paddock basically just said, yeah, it was not a good effort. He liked Sim's play. Sure, he gave up 5 goals, but there could have been a lot more. He made some really good saves down the stretch throughout basically the second half of the game, keep him in it, somewhat in it. Then John pointed out he thought Sim, Barnett, and Michaels were the best players. So when you're giving props to your fourth liners, that's never a good thing. That kind of almost maybe sends a message saying top 3 lines weren't good, and they weren't good. So it's another tough game. 2 in a row, which is not the greatest to see. But they get Moose Jaw here now with the rescheduled game on Wednesday, prior to the Everett game Saturday and Tri-City Sunday. Hopefully they can get back on it and put forth a good effort against a solid Moose Jaw team on Wednesday here. There isn't really much else to say about that game, so we're going to go right to the interview with Chad Balcom, and he gives us some great insight on the Everett and Tri-City and the American division. All right, we're going to welcome in Chad Balcom right now. He is the co-host of WHL Unfiltered. It's a long-form show covering everything in the WHL, and he also does the Pucklandia podcast. That's all things Portland Winterhawks. So if you're interested in hearing more, anything covering the WHL, he does a great job. Him and Sean Mullen, they do kind of a long-form storytelling, almost type show. It's great. They have some great guests, and then if you want to get deep into Portland Winterhawks talk, check out Pucklandia. Welcome, Chad.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. So we reached out to you because, well, we've got a couple American teams coming in. We haven't seen them in the building in 4 years. I looked at the rosters. I think there's one player that's played in Regina. So, so I thought bring on somebody, give us a little insight to Everett and Tri-City upcoming this weekend.
So which direction you want to go? Who's coming in first?
Everett's coming in on Saturday, so let's start with them.
So the Silvertips are, I mean, they're fun. I mean, they're a team that, you know, sometimes they catch a little bit of crap as far as, you know, the way they go about things. I mean, they, you know, in the bubble season, I think they went like 20-2. Like they, you know, everybody else is bringing in their 15s and 16s and trying to play for the future. And the Silvertips, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with this, but they're like, if we're playing games and we're, you know, gonna, you know, count wins and losses, then we're gonna count some wins. You know, and that's how they approached it, and that's fine. But, you know, they're a really interesting team even this year. Like, you know, they're sitting at 7-3. But which is pretty good, right? But it seems like, I mean, they gave up 11 goals the other night to Seattle. They gave up 6 goals on Friday night to Tri-City. I mean, it seems like their losses so far this year have been like pretty bad, like to where the point where you go to look at the standings and you're like, man, those Silvertips, they must really be struggling. And you're like, well, then again, I mean, most teams would be really happy at 7-3. So they're kind of a hard read at the moment, but at the same time, I mean, they have a share of, well, they coming into the weekend they had a share of first place in the division. So I mean, they have, Dennis Williams, been coaching there for a few years, and so they have a little bit of consistency there, and they're they're pretty interesting, and not to be again no lightweight by any stretch, but I haven't seen them live this year. I will say that, but they're kind of a hard read so far.
Yeah, and you kind of thought about when you think about Everett, you kind of think of defensive style, good goaltending all the time, maybe not as offensive. But maybe that's kind of changing. I thought, with that run to the final there against Swift Current, you could see that they're coming maybe not out of their shell, but you could kind of see it's changing a bit for them, isn't it?
Well, that's one thing that's really interesting about that team too. Is yeah, they get that kind of stereotype, you know, Kevin Constantine, Mitch Love, kind of a thing. But it doesn't seem like, but they stick to it though. It doesn't seem like it matters. Like they get some firepower coming through there, and it doesn't change how they play. And they get a good, this goalie, that goalie. That doesn't seem like it matters either. Like they're so consistent in the way they play from the back end out, year to year, class to class. It's kind of funny in a lot of ways. Like it just seems like it's kind of plug and play for them, and has been for 10 years or whatever. It's really interesting. Even have a Nikita Sherbeck. It's like it doesn't seem like they really figure out how to harness that. And try to get up the ice, in a hurry. Even when they hired, their current GM, from the Portland Winterhawks, and they said we want to play more like they play, and then they didn't. What I mean? It was just kind of interesting, and so yeah, you kind of you give them a hard time, but they do kind of play that trapping hockey that they have the hold the puck behind the net while they change. They love that one, that kind of thing. But at the same time, it works for them, and they win games and they keep going.
Yeah, you look at their power play, and it's right up there. The penalty kill doesn't seem to be too hot, but yeah. What are a couple kind of names that you've maybe noticed? Not that you've seen them in person yet, but that stand out to you. Like I said, we haven't seen any of these players at all in person. So
I think, I mean, the Hofer kid, and maybe I just think about the previous Hofers that have came through the league, but
yeah,
I think he's doing pretty well for him. I mean, Austin Roost is a guy from BC. He's a kid that I think is really playing well for them too. I mean, from what I've seen of them, I talked to their their radio guy I have on my show sometimes. He's a pretty energetic kid, and yeah, and he has a lot to say about the Roost. You want to watch for him. I mean, obviously on the back end, Olin Zellweger. I mean, there was talk of they didn't know if he was going to come back. As far as being an Anaheim pick, and they were pretty high on him. I think he had a pretty good NHL camp. I think he made some plays. Drew some interest, but obviously as a defenseman, it's pretty hard to make the NHL at any age, especially at 19.
definitely.
And so
yeah,
he's back, and I think he's had a pretty good run so far. Coming back to Silvertip. So that's as a Alberta kid, that's a guy that's a lot of fun to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he really stood out at the World Juniors there before the season started. I think he kind of maybe elevated his game for that, and maybe his stock even, and heading into the NHL camp. I mean, he's got 5 goals, 5 assists already in 7 games for them from the back end. So definitely, that's a name that we noticed if you were watching World Juniors.
Isn't that fun as far as the World Juniors before the season started?
Yeah.
Like Wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what happened? I mean, it's a wild world where we live in these days. But yeah, definitely, like, the World Juniors before the season started, for sure.
Yeah, so he's an 18 at that tournament. So he'll be back again for the one in the winter here. So that'd be
Going to open up a different tab. I mean, I kind of sold myself short on Austin Roos. I mean, 18 points in 10 games. Like, I knew he was doing well, but I hadn't actually looked at the numbers till now. Like, that's pretty good.
that's not bad at all.
9 goals, 9 assists in 10 games. Like,
He's only
what do you want out of the guy?
he's second in the league, only behind Mr. Bedard. So
Yeah. But I know you guys talk plenty about Bedard, but yeah, doing pretty well.
yeah, no, for sure. All right, moving. Anything else you got from Everett?
Well, let's go back the other way. Like, we talk about the schedule. You haven't seen the Silvertips in a number of years, and the chances of Connor Bedard playing in the U.S. division in juniors is really slim, and that's just frustrating. And it's the way it's going to be. But this comes back as a 19 somehow. But
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, I know I don't know how they decided that, which divisions were going where this year. I mean, I think if you look at the way it played out, 18 US was here in 18, and then the East went to the US in 19. So then it's technically the US's turn to come back this way this season. So I don't know if they went off that or what, or who knows what the decision was there, but yeah, that's unfortunate, right? Like to not be able to see every team every year is definitely unfortunate.
I mean, back in the day, it didn't matter because it was the BC division this year and then the US division the next year and vice versa. So, it's luck of the draw, like from one year to the next. But yeah, then when we lost a couple of years, I mean, it's a once in a lifetime situation you have to go through. And obviously, I mean, it's not fun to talk about these things on these shows, but yeah, it's just frustrating, for a guy like that, or Cody Glass or whatever, like some of these, high profile guys that, you don't get the opportunity to see, like, or less opportunities to see anyway, I mean, that's, to go off on a tangent. I mean, that was, Medicine Hat just came through here. And so I was fortunate enough to meet one of the folks of a guy, a parent that had a player on that club. And he's like, look, I'm going to make that trip. Like, they're only coming through there twice ever while my boy's on the team, if that,
Yeah.
So why not make that trip? You know what I mean? So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, you want to see that talent that's out in that other conference, which we don't see, like local kids, or not even just local kids. There's talent on the other side of the continent there that, on the coast that we would like to see more often. But
yeah,
that's, that's, you go down a rabbit hole. Like, it's like the cost and all the work they have to put into that and stuff. But it is what it is.
Well, I mean, me and you don't got to ride the bus.
No, exactly.
And that's the thing. But the other hand of that, I mean, Princess Patricia's, light Canadian infantry. I mean, like, the longest storied team of all of Major Junior. I haven't got to see them for a few years, and won't this year. And I would like to, whatever, right? So I mean, it's a thing we could talk about for sure. But again, that's where we're at as far as this particular conversation. And what did the U.S. division teams bring?
Yeah. So, but yeah, there's always something to talk about, right? There's always, this or that, or long discussions we have about this league that we all love, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I guess going into Tri-City, I mean, Tri-City's kind of just been middling over the last few years. Nothing's really stood out on my end that I've seen from them. They've kind of just plugging away, not doing anything crazy special or not really scraping the bottom of the barrel. Really, it's just they just plugged along and just carrying on.
That's an exact. You're dead on. That's exactly who the Hams are and have been. I've got friends in their front office. Like it's been frustrating, and it doesn't seem like they figure out how to build on what they have. I mean, and even as we speak, at time of this recording, they're 5-5. But man, they had a big weekend, huge weekend. They won 6-3 over Everett on the Friday night, which I think they were down 4-2 going into the third period. They came out, put up some goals on a good Everett team, and that's that I think a lot of people took notice of that.
Yeah.
And then they had this an undefeated Winterhawks team come in there, which I'm familiar with, obviously, and a 7-0 Winterhawks team, and the Hams put up 4 goals in the first period. It's 4-0 before you can blink. Took advantage of some power plays. Made it work. I mean, they have a Euro goalie that they really like. And I've heard a lot of different pronunciations for Shukanik. I'm not sure what the proper one is, but he's really popular, almost a folk hero out there.
Okay.
And so they're feeling really good about themselves, putting up 13 goals on two nights. Some real, I guess, some good divisional competition. So I mean, the Hams as of right now feel really good about themselves, and I think that they should.
Yeah, you look at his numbers, Shukanik's numbers. It's .919 save percentage. Like that's nothing to sneeze at in this league. I mean, the goals against is .337, but you look at that save percentage, and that'll take you somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, Tyson Greenway put up 3 goals and 2 assists last night. Like that's, I mean, again, that's a pretty good weekend right there in itself. Besides, whatever happened the night prior. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see them have some success. Because they have been kind of middling for a long time, and you want to try to get butts in the seats out there, and you want to see them have success. But again, against your team, if you're a Winterhawks fan, which a lot of folks I know are, you hate to see it, but they it seems like maybe they're starting to turn the corner and build something.
Yeah, well, that's nice to see. Because we don't really know what's going on in that U.S. division. So, I mean, they don't really. Just looking at their roster and stats, like there isn't really any names that really jump out to you. Maybe Lucas Dragicevic. His dad played for the Pats back in the day, so I mean that's kind of a name that Pats fans might know. And other than that, there isn't anything that jumps off the page.
Well, one of the ones that really hurt them was when Dwayne Jean Jr. decided that he wanted to play closer to home and got traded to Red Deer, and that's frustrating. For me personally, like this is a kid that I was really excited to see develop this year and see what he was going to do, and now I've got to watch it, online in the Century Room up there for Red Deer. And I was disappointed because I thought, well, I still do, I guess, think that he's got a bright future and think he's going to do something in this league. But I thought he was going to, make some noise for the Hams, and he's not. But at the same time, I mean, it doesn't really make sense to go down the rabbit hole of guys that aren't on the Hams team as far as trying to forecast, what you're getting into here coming up.
Yeah, I mean, we Kevin and I have both talked about Red Deer, and it's interesting. I don't want, not to go off too much of a tangent, but they've been a little bit of a surprise this year. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you'll be seeing them, but I mean, they had a solid season last year, and they came into this season without any goaltending with WHL experience. So it was kind of like, ooh, what's going to happen there? Like, and then they get Ben King back, and so they're rolling obviously at 10-0. So
Wow, they go from, I mean, when the year that they lived at the rink,
yeah,
which is so, it's still really fun to think about at this point, but it didn't work out for them very well in wins and losses. And then you bring in not Constantine, but Connor Walchuk. One of my favorite Avalanche forwards, by the way, and Kevin and Steve Walchuk, former Winterhawk, and to see what they've done, with them changing the culture there, like, yeah, I mean, it's obviously not a Red Deer Rebels podcast, but it's really fun to see what they've done, with in the Connor Walchuk era.
yeah, like I think he's really, I wouldn't say turned that team around, because that team was always a solid team, and they just couldn't get over that hump. And you kind of maybe think of the Everett style, where they were always a little more defensive, and they're always tough to play against. That Sutter hockey, right? And in whatever, maybe Connor Walchuk's just brought a different voice and really brought them out of their shell even a bit. Like I said, goalies with no WHL experience coming into the season, and they've given up 18 goals in 10 games. Like that's surprising. Like it really isn't any way other to put it than that. So, but
yeah. So what do you think? Where do you want to go after this?
I mean, those two are coming in right away, and then we're seeing the other teams later in the season. So maybe we'll have to get you on again later in the season. But yeah, any other thoughts of maybe the U.S. division as a whole? Like, it's always competitive. Like, Portland's always there. Seattle looks poised to start that trend of losing in the final and winning the next season. And then, yeah, I mean, Spokane looks down this year, and it looks like Everett and Tri-City might be pretty decent contenders. So
Yeah. I mean, it's Spokane's a little, I haven't seen much of them. They have a new GM, and one that's familiar to Portland fans, and Matt Bardsley. And so it'll be, curious to see what he does as far as, what's for now and what's for, build for the future. Again, Everett, I mean, that's the team you always expect the cycle to catch up with you, that, you can only be so good for so long, but they tend to figure out a way around that.
Yeah.
As the part touched on earlier.
yeah, it just hasn't. Yeah, they just, like you said, consistency all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Thunderbirds, they seem to, I mean, they're real strong. I think where they might be the last undefeated team in the dub, I think.
No, Red Deer still hasn't lost either. So
Red Deer, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, definitely kind of Walchuk tie in there. And they did pretty well with signing the Grayson Sawchuk kid out of the U.S. draft. I mean, they're poised to do pretty well, but we'll see how that goes down the stretch.
yeah, that was an interesting maybe trade with Red Deer, that they were able to trade for him and then actually sign him. So, and I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about that him as well, because the Pats picked up Sam Aremba from them, a local kid here, and yeah, like he set records in the city here, and he's a 17-year-old, and everybody talking about what are the Pats going to do for this year, and then they make this trade, and it's a 17-year-old. But I think Seattle was just like, the emergence of Sachin, I think maybe made Aremba a little expendable at a 17-year-old on a team that's looking to win the WHL. So that's maybe they got some picks that they can use to supplement that run here coming up this season. So I've been thinking about that Sachin. That's a pretty big signing for them, because he's really turned out to be a good player already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just as an aside, I mean, that's one of the things that's really fascinating about being an American fan of this league and in this division that you have we don't have local kids. We don't have guys that are from up the street.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like on occasion, I mean, I'm trying to think of, there have been, Paul Gostad is from here and played from here before he went to play for Buffalo. I mean, there are occasions, but it's just kind of funny. You're like, oh yeah, a kid from Moose Jaw playing for Moose Jaw. Well, that's fun. We don't have we just don't have that here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that being said, go ahead.
It's definitely growing though, right? You can see the American kids are definitely, even just into the NHL, right? Depending what route they take, but you see the American kids are really, really the high. You can see the high end as well. Like it's not just third or fourth line American players in the NHL. You see the Austin Matthews and stuff like that grew up and played most of their hockey in the States, before they made it to the NHL. So, it's coming, right?
Oh, sure, yeah, and we got California kids, and yeah, you mentioned a Arizona guy, and there's guys from Texas, but here in Portland, Oregon, we have I think it's 2.5-3 million people, and we have 3 rinks.
Yeah.
I mean, the Swift Current has more rinks than we have. I mean, it's just a weird animal that we live with. I mean, I know guys that play at midnight or whatever, because that's how that's when the ice is.
Well, we still play at midnight too, and we got how many rinks? So the more rinks you have, the more people you have playing, right? So we still get stuck at midnights sometimes.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, but at least you guys are named after a queen. We don't have that. So. But yeah, I mean, but to kind of round out the division, I mean, coming into this season, even the team I followed the closest here in Portland, like I didn't know what they were going to do, and I guess we still don't, right? But they don't have the star power that they often have, and so then where is the goals going to come from? But a lot of it is last year they played 4 17-year-old defensemen on the same team, which is kind of unusual,
Yeah.
Well, now they are 4 18-year-old defensemen with the years of experience. And so once you move the puck out of the zone from the D-man, then maybe you don't necessarily need the high-end skill like you would like to have, because again, if you get the puck out of your own end, well, that's 90% of it, and then you go down and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
And so they've been up until last night when they played against the Ams and fell on their face, but up until that, I mean, they've 7-0 or 7-1 now, and it's been really interesting to see what they do with the quote unquote no name forwards they have, and not lacking the star power. So this Winter team, it seems like we talk about the consistency of the Silvertips. Well, I mean, Portland's kind of has that same kind of consistency as well, and so they seem like they're going to be making some noise this year as well, even without having the star power.
Yeah, you look at the star power, but the power play is looking good. Like they're second in the league, so that always helps, right? If you don't, got to take advantage of the man advantage when you don't have, maybe as much skill as the other team 5-on-5, and it doesn't look like they take too many penalties. They're right down there in penalty minutes and stuff. So yeah, and like you said, it always seems Portland's always, yeah, like you said, consistency and star power. That definitely goes hand in hand with the Winterhawks as well. Yeah, no, it's fun going on that rink on a regular basis, and knowing that you're probably going to see some goals one way or the other. Yeah. All right, then. I think that's pretty good summary of the U.S. division for this week, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's early. I haven't seen all the teams, or certainly not very much, But
Yeah.
hopefully, I got a little bit of a better feel for you than what you're trying to look at.
No, yeah, no, we have no idea out here, right? So, you look at the rosters and it's who and what and where are they from and stuff. So, yeah, hopefully our listeners will enjoy this little segment. And yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, Chad.
Hey, I appreciate the invite.
All right, that was great insight from Chad, and thanks again for coming on. And I guess now it's time for predictions. Like, this team needs to make the playoffs. These are going to be 3 tough games. Tri-City's on a roll, like you said. Everett's always solid, and Moose Jaw's been pretty tough to play against. But to make the playoffs, you need to be over 500. It's going to be tough if you're only winning 1 out of 3 games. They need to win 2 games, so I'm going to predict 2 wins and a loss for this week, and we'll go from there. I mean, they could easily go 1-2. An 0-3 week would be real rough, and you don't want to see that. So hoping that doesn't happen, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully this team can turn around after a couple of lackluster efforts here. So with that, we'll see you down at the rink. Good night, folks.